Can you believe that these little bits of cloth were colored using flower petals and leaves? A couple of weeks ago, I went to a fiber festival because at this time of year, I always start to think about knitting and warm, woolly things. And at one of the booths, they were using flower petals to make little badges. And these are the badges that I made. The blue ones are dyed with indigo, and the others were made by rubbing flower petals into the pieces of cloth, just like I'm doing here with these marigold flowers. And you'll notice that I've taped off some parts of the cloth, and that's just to give it a little bit of extra pattern because I am a maximalist after all. I've also got this little pink flower, and I don't know what kind of flower it is. It's just something that I picked out of my daughter's garden, and let's see what that will do. Definitely these fresh flower petals are making the cloth quite a bit darker than it was, but let's see what happens when I peel off that tape. At the festival that I was at, they used small pieces of silkscreen to create the different shapes and patterns, but I don't have any of those at home, so I'm just using what I have. So I think this is a pretty nifty way to dye cloth, but I will tell you that you do have to prepare your cloth first. The first thing you need to do is to scour or wash the cloth with a pH neutral soap, and then once you've done that, you need to apply what's called a tannin. And then after you've added the tannin, you add something called alum, which is a chemical. These will all help the pigments in the flowers to stick to the cloth so that they're less likely to fade. You might have seen this stitch piece that I made back in the spring, and I'm working on an autumn themed one as well, and I'd like to include my little patches in this piece. And I'm thinking I might be able to arrange them in a long line like this on a background. But a couple of weeks ago when I visited Fort Langley, we went and poked around in some of the antique malls that they have there, where they had quite a few interesting fabrics, like these embroidered gingham pieces with cross stitch and something called chicken scratch, which is something that I want to explore a little bit more, but I don't think I'm going to be doing that today. And I'm personally very fond of hexagons like this, but I'm really thinking about this piece of patchwork with all those little plaids in it, and I think that I could possibly do something similar to that. And I also happen to have in my stash some perfectly cut little checkered squares that fit really well. They were not cut by me. They would be a lot less perfect if they had been cut by me, but they seem to go really nicely with my printed squares here, and that fits almost perfectly. So I think that is what I'm going to do. And this is the piece that I made in an earlier video. Oh, and look what else I found. Maybe I'll find a way to use my little skull as well. Who knows? We'll see. 'Tis the season and all. So I'm going to start out with this backing piece, and I'm going to sew my little squares directly onto it. Now, if I were doing a proper quilty type patchwork, I would hide all the raw edges on the back of my cloth, but I don't think that my pieces are going to be big enough. I think that with the raw edges open, they'll just barely fit in the space that I have available. So I'm just going to stitch them, just using a running stitch straight onto this backing piece of cloth. So it's not going to be technically a quilty type of patchwork, but I think this is going to look pretty cool. So you may have noticed that I'm not sewing these in the way that I had first laid them out, and I'm not worried about that. I think things will work out as they should. I did have a plan, but I'm just letting my hands guide my choices of where the pieces of cloth are going to go, and we'll see how that works out for me. And I know that some of you may be thinking, that's perhaps not the best way to go about doing this. And that might make you feel a little bit uncomfortable that I'm not actually following a plan here, and I'm just seeing what ends up happening as I choose each of the pieces. And now at this point, let's see what options I have for these last three pieces that I have here. And I think that however I arrange these, things are going to be a little bit lopsided. But maybe that's okay. We'll see. We'll see. So I'm going to start with this dark one, and we'll see where we go from there. And that is the arrangement that I ended up with. And And that arrangement doesn't really excite me, but I'm not going to take it out because I know that I can always change things. You remember that little skull that popped up? Well, 'tis the season, and maybe I can add some more decorative elements onto the plaid squares there, because even though I started out with the checked patchworks, I don't have to stay there. I can do whatever I want because it's my project. And how about some leaves? I still have the orange cloth that I used to cut out the pumpkins, so I cut out a rough leaf shape and I'm going to stick that down. Perhaps I'll do more than one. I'm not planning what this is going to look like in the end. I'm just making one decision at a time. So after I've secured my leaf down, I decided that I needed a spider. But I don't really feel like stitching down 8 little spider legs, so I decided to draw the legs in instead, and I'm using an acrylic paint pen. The brand is Posca, and they come in different sizes. This particular one has a fairly fine tip, but you could use a Sharpie or whatever other kind of permanent marker you would like to use to draw in legs if you don't feel like doing all those little stitches. And now how about some soup? Oh, no, that's not soup. That is some cloth that I'm scouring with Synthropol soap that I showed you earlier. Now that's better. It's some nice yummy tomato soup. Let's make a little bowl of tomato soup. And I'm just going to use the teeniest, tiniest little scraps that I have left over sitting on my desk from other things that I've been making lately. And I even have some perfect little bits that make the little green bits of parsley on the soup. And that yellow square is feeling a little naked, so how about a little bit of lace there? Just because, no good reason. And of course, every spider needs a web, so let's add a spider web. And I've got this really fun sparkly yarn that one of my really lovely viewers gave to me several months ago, and I think that that's perfect for a dew speckle spider web. It's a little bit hard to sew this through the cloth that I'm using, but I definitely think that sparkly look is worth the effort. And now I'll just go around with some glow-in-the-dark thread for the weavers that go around and around and around the circle there, and my spider web will be finished. And that's it for this piece. I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. I hope you liked this video, and thank you very much for watching. And I will see you again soon. Bye for now. The skull is also glow in the dark. Let me show you.